Good morning. My name is Rabbi Rachel Ain. I'm Barnard class of 99, so this is my 15th reunion. I'm the rabbi at Sutton Place Synagogue here on the east side of Manhattan, and it's really an honor to be here at the memorial service. There's something magical about coming to our college reunion. On one hand, we step back into a time gone by, outside of what is now the reality of our life, and we recall the moments of exploration, development, love, loss, and more. We think about the people with whom we traveled on that journey and who continue to walk beside us when we leave the Barnard gates, only to re-enter quickly into our regular lives. For 48 hours, we have been together to not just remember the physical space, which is of course important, but the people and the moments that impacted our lives while we were here. And so we come together this morning to remember those who can't be with us physically, but are with us in our hearts, our minds, and our souls. We think about those who lived lives long in days and impact, and those whose lives were cut too short, but their impact is still immeasurable. I recently finished reading Christopher Hitchens' book, Mortality. I imagine that you might be surprised to hear that a rabbi is reading a book from one of the most devout atheists out there. But his book, which tracks his life, his last year of life, can teach each of us how to live, how to die, and how to remember. In his book, he looks at everyday interactions, like how we look at our credit cards, to force us to think about how to live. He shares his profound moment of wondering when he looked at his expiration date on his Amex and curiously wondered, would he outlive it? Or his driver's license, or his passport. To outlive an expiration date is a normal assumption, and yet we know that there does come a point when we can't, at least not physically. And so we hold gatherings such as this, where we come together to show that through their loved ones and friends and relatives, though they might have passed away, their impact is forever in our hearts. We know that we might not remember each conversation we had in Reed Hall or Butler Library or in McIntosh, but we know that the impact on our lives goes way beyond their date of death. The world lost an incredible writer this week. As Maya Angelou was famous for saying, "I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." Today, we recall those people who helped us feel, who helped us love, who helped us flourish. And as we recall them and their attributes, we think about the lives they lived and the impact they had. We read their names with fondness and, of course, sadness that they aren't sitting beside us. And we pledge to act in their name, in their memory, and to live out the values that are so deeply cherished. And so this morning we'll continue with a number of readings and remembrances about those who we care so deeply about. Thank you. We'll now continue with the program.
Thank you for inviting me to be here today. I'm here. Peggy Binder-Zamitis was an aunt to both my husband Matthew and I. She was also a good friend, one who was supportive, caring, and giving, and she touched and impacted many lives, some here at Barnard. I'd like to read a poem called Afterglow. I'd like the memory of me to be a happy one. I'd like to leave an afterglow of smiles when the day is done. I'd like to leave an echo whispering softly down the ways of happy times and laughing times and bright and sunny days. I'd like the tears of those who grieve to dry before the sun, of happy memories I leave behind when day is done, by Helen Lowry Marshall in 1958.
Good morning. I'm Carol Cohen, class of 1959. We just celebrated our 55th reunion, and I'm here today to do a personal memoir of a classmate of ours who was an economics major, a wonderful woman, and she died April 28th of cancer. Gail was a committed and loyal alumna of Barnard. She was a woman of strength and grace, sensible, thoughtful, and unassuming in all she did for Barnard, and I'm sure in her life as well. For many years, Gail served on our class reunion committees where we got to know each other. She often called classmates to update them on Barnard, invite them to reunions, and of course, ask for gifts for the annual fund. At our 50th reunion, we had the opportunity to spend time together. It was a pleasure to talk to her as we learned more about each other's lives. Gail visited New York about 2 years ago, and she, Evelyn Gelman, a classmate and also an economics major, and I met for lunch and conversation, and of course discussed the best places to shop in the city. We hoped such visits would continue. But it wasn't until I read Gail's obituary notice that I realized Gail had never spoken of her work history. After graduating from Barnard, she spent 5 interesting and challenging years as a systems engineer with IBM, including working on the ticker tape automation project of the New York Stock Exchange. Remember, this was not the computer years yet. Some years later, though, she worked in computer programming and spent 6 years in the development office of the Albany Institute of History and Art. Her life was filled with much love. Her husband, Jay, who predeceased her, her 3 children and their spouses, 5 grandchildren, and 3 great-grandchildren. Gail had a rich and fulfilling life. We only wish it had lasted much longer. I also want to add that at our Friday night dinner, we learned that another classmate of ours had died suddenly, Miriam Dushman Mazer, at the beginning of April of this year. Her name is not included in the book because we didn't know about it early enough. Thank you.
I'm Jane Perman, and I'm specifically remembering the alumni of the 1960s, but of course this reading is in memory of everyone who we have lost over the years. And I'd specifically like to mention someone from our class whose name got left out, Carolyn Hillman, who died this year. A Litany of Remembrance by Roland Gittleson. In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we remember them. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we remember them. In the opening of buds and in the rebirth of spring, we remember them. In the blueness of the sky and the warmth of summer, we remember them. In the rustling of the leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we remember them. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we remember them. When we are weary and in need of strength, we remember them. When we are lost and sick at heart, we remember them. When we have joys we yearn to share, we remember them. So long as we live, they too shall live, for they are now a part of us as we remember them.
The poem I'm about to read is obviously in memory of everyone, but I want to single out two members of my own class, the class of 1971, and Remington Patterson of the English department, Florrie Braffman, who is a Barnard alumna, but also was on my staff for 17 and a half years, and Karen Blank, who was the Dean of Studies for almost 20 years. Dirge without music. I am not resigned to the shutting away of loving hearts in the hard ground. So it is, and so it will be, for so it has been, time out of mind. Into the darkness they go, the wise and the lovely. Crowned with lilies and laurel they go, but I am not resigned. Lovers and thinkers, into the earth with you. Be one with the dull, the indiscriminate dust. A fragment of what you felt, of what you knew, a formula, a phrase remains, but the best is lost. The answers quick and keen, the honest look, the laughter, the love, they are gone. They are gone to feed the roses. Elegant and curled is the blossom, fragrant is the blossom. I know, but I do not approve. More precious was the light in your eyes than all the roses in the world. Down, down, down into the darkness of the grave, gently they go, the beautiful, the tender, the kind. Quietly they go, the intelligent, the witty, the brave. I know, but I do not approve, and I am not resigned.
We'll now take an opportunity if there are any family or friends that would like to offer a remembrance for one of their loved ones.
I'm a brother-in-law. I'm speaking of Judith Jaffe Baum, who died very suddenly less than 6 months ago. We're here with her immediate family and many of her friends to remember her once again. She was a woman who was passionate about many things. Of course, her family, her daughters, her two grandsons, her partner, and her sister, as well as many close friends from the school and from work. Many of you know her from her activities in Barnard Alumni Association, and her friends in education in New York City know her well from her blog on the internet concerning public education in the New York school system. We all miss her. And we always will.
Good morning. I'm Celia Knight, class of 1974, and I'm here to specifically share with you my remembrance of Karen O'Neill, class of 1974. I met Karen in 1969. We were freshmen, and we didn't graduate exactly when we expected to, but in the time we shared many experiences. We met many students, many teachers, and I identified with the experience of being here longer than I expected, and I identified with her based on that. But more importantly, it was Karen who suggested to another alumna who's not here, Linda Medley, that we get involved in speaking with the students who are presently at Barnard, who were in what was called the HEOP program. I think it still exists, HEOP and C-STEP. And it was indirectly through Karen that I started meeting those students. She was a strong person, a person with a sense of humor. She shared her family with us. She had the good fortune to live in the Bronx, and we visited her mother, her father, and her sisters. She also helped to facilitate a concert that we attended with the Howard University Gospel Chorus, which was very, very nourishing to us at that time, because you can imagine many of us were African American, and we wanted to hear gospel music and live music, and that was pleasurable to us. I will remember Karen, obviously, and I'm very grateful to Barnard for making it possible for me to meet Karen.
Hi, I'm Frances Sadler. I'm a member of the class of 1972. I want to just remember a classmate of mine, Linda Ree. My class has a council that existed long before I was really involved in it, that planned reunions and made phone calls and kept in touch. And Linda was a very active member of that group for many, many years. Last year, when we started planning for reunion, because she decided that we should have a mini reunion at the luncheon and reunion all the time, and would make lots of telephone calls to people to say, you live in New York, you live in New Jersey, you can get to Barnard even if it's just for Saturday, even if it's not our milestone year, you can get there Saturday and we can catch up. And when we started planning last year to do that, we found out that Linda had brain cancer. And she died very suddenly, quickly. We came to reunion last year, and we left from the luncheon and went to visit her, and by the next Friday she was dead. And so the impact of being here just reminds me of it. But my classmates love her, and we miss her. And so I wanted to just honor the fact that she was a real Barnard alum and really wanted to be involved in everything, and was involved right up to the end. Magical thinking had her thinking that she was going to get discharged from the hospital just for the day to come for the luncheon, but that, of course, didn't happen. I also want to just say, to remember Elaine Hildebrand Muser. Mrs. Muser was a member of my church, and her mother started the school that my church did for many, many years. And it wasn't, and we talked about a lot of things, but she's the class of 1939, and so we weren't close. We were church members. And then I came to a torchbearer's reception, and there was Mrs. Muser. And so all of it's just a reminder that Barnard women are everywhere doing wonderful things.
Hello, I'm Alice Hawkins, and originally class of '82. I have 3 people to remember. I guess I'll start with my half-sister. She was the class of 1959. Her name, Joan Hawkins Reedinger. And she died this past summer. She came to Barnard because she was a polio victim and was crippled, and Barnard had a small campus. So this seemed ideal for her, but she decided to be a foreign area studies major. And so her final year she spent in England, and after that she traveled to California and got her master's in library science, and met her husband and had two really wonderful children, and ended up in charge of a whole school district of libraries. So I wasn't very close to her because of the nature of our stepfamily, but I had some really lovely exchanges with her where she gave me just wonderful empathy and just the feeling of strength. I mean, this was a person with a disability who was completely just lived a full life and overcame all of that. So I honor her. She was the class of 1959. I guess I said that. The second person I'm very heartbroken over is Amy Ober-Flanders, and she was the class of 78. She had graduated by the time I was here. She was an English major, and she was directed professionally at the American Place Theater. She graduated, I think, Phi Beta Kappa, and we had some of the same professors that we loved. And she came back to Barnard to direct a play, and it was Wings of the Dove, and I auditioned for it. And I think she asked some people around the theater department if they knew me, and I think somebody said, well, she's talented, but very nervous. And Amy took a risk and cast me in the lead role. And I can't tell you the gratitude I have for that, not just because of the experience was a good one, but because Amy became just one of the dearest friends of my life. And her presence in my life was just loving and healing and wonderful. She had an intelligence like I never encountered in anyone before. And we ended up living close, actually, in our adult lives. So her death was sudden and very much a shock. She had become a therapist, which was a wonderful profession for her. So she had her interest in theater, she had a nutritional business, and she also was the director of the trauma program at the Karen Horn Eye Clinic. And anyway, I'm still trying to figure out how to live without her. She was a very, very dear person. And the last person I want to remember is my mother, who was the class of 1937. She passed away at the age of 97 this past fall. And she's the one I'm having the hardest time kind of pulling some thoughts together about. But she attended Barnard during the white-gloved and hat class time, and smoked a lot and played bridge, and hung out at Chock full of Nuts, and that was like our continuity was Chock full of Nuts. She wanted it to be bridge. She sent all her daughters to college with a pack of cards, hoping that we would take up bridge. I think that a lot of us, I don't know if this is something shared or not, but I think that coming to a reunion, you come up against your achievement. You know, did I achieve enough? Did I not achieve enough? And oh my God, that's a great achievement or whatever. And I think my mother, from 1937, I think she suffered a little bit from feeling like she hadn't achieved quite enough, and she said that to me one time, like she felt like she could have done more. And I think her father was a partner in a law firm, and she had said she wanted to go into law, and he kind of laughed at her and said, "Woman in law, what a joke," And so she had that little bit of feeling of not quite having, fulfilled her achievement goals. But what I perceive with my mother is she was, the achievement really was who she was, and she was just always reading. She always knew what was happening in politics. She worked so hard. She was the hardest worker. I mean, any menial task, any, and then she'd put that day. So she traded the white gloves for farm gloves. And in 1959, when I was born, they bought a 100-acre farm. And she completely went to work. My mother was driving a tractor. I mean, So, I just, and she helped my father write books. They collaborated on books together, and they collaborated on making a board game together and other things like that. But, really what I saw in her was just this incredible industry all the time, and great patience, great gentleness. I had a very late life baby, and she was determined to be a good grandmother to him, and she wanted him to remember her. And she would get down on her hands and knees to play with him in her 90s. And he did. She's a very special grandma, to my son, which is just kind of a remarkable gift. And so anyway, I just wanted to honor, my great lady mother. Oh, did I say her? It's Elizabeth Walton Hawkins, class of 37. Thank you.
Good morning.
Greetings. My name is Joseph Ford III, obviously of Public Safety Department. This is Jeanette Darby and Rolando Martinez. We're members of local TWU Local 264. This is the vice president of our local, and I'm the recording secretary. We lost a dear brother and friend and an important fabric of this campus, Alan Strauss, affectionately known as Big Al. He was loved by many, and he touched everyone's lives. He was very into movies, and I mean old movies, even the silent ones. He knew a thorough history of movies, and he always spoke to the students about it. He spoke to us about it. He was involved on campus with it, and he just knew how to communicate with people. At times, he did get on our nerves, but we loved him. Now it's Big Al, and he just, somehow or another, he had a connection with everyone. And we not too long ago, we lost him, and it hasn't been the same. The students, ourselves, the locker room, the union itself. And he was a very dear and loving guy. He has little grumpy ways. And, but he was such a special character, and he really touched our hearts, And we love him and we missed him. And we also, within the last 5 days, we lost another dear soldier, Terry Dillon, who also worked in the public safety department. So we've been hit kind of hard lately here, but we're still here, we're still smiling, we're still touching the students as we've always done in the past, and we always will in the future, because we're here to protect them, we're here to put them at ease as students with the stresses there are, and to make sure they go back safely to their loving parents. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Jeanette Darby. I've been public safety for 22 years here at Barnard. We lost a lot of people here at Barnard since I've been employed, and it's been very hard. My brother Alan Strauss, me and another co-worker, we found him passed away. He wasn't here one day, and we went to look for him, and his family was here and did not know where he was. And we took a ride to his house and found him that morning, Sunday morning. It haven't been the same without him. They call him my second husband because we fuss every day. He's truly missed. A lot of you also remember Phyllis Ben. She also worked here at Barnard, a very lovely person. That was my second mom's, me and her locker together. It's hard when you work here for a long time and you see people leaving. It's like your second family, and we be here more than you be home. And it's very hard to come in and you see that person not here, but you have them right here in your hearts with you. So I know everyone in here could imagine your alumni sister, your brother not being here with you. One day you're here and the next day you're not. Everyone needs to keep contact with each other because we don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. And I just want to thank everyone here for giving us the opportunity to be here with y'all this morning. And just thank God and love everybody and have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Aaron Navarro, and I'm here to remember my dear wife of 40-plus years, Irene Guggenheim, class of '69. She was a biology major, and yet her love was for art history and antique jewelry. And as a matter of fact, she wrote a wonderful article in one of the journals about hair jewelry. And she became the resident jewelry expert at Tudor Place in Washington, D.C., where we resided for over 35 years. And I'm just here to remember her. She was a wonderful and devoted spouse, gave me 2 wonderful sons. Eddie's here, and Daniel, and a grandmother of 2 lovely grandchildren, Rebecca and Samuel. I do miss Irene. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. And every year now in our lives is a milestone year. I'm a class of '52, co-president of the class of '52, and even though it's not the number 5 and the 5th anniversary, milestone anniversary, we are now celebrating every year. It's now a milestone. And we had a lovely time at our recent reunion where we had our own table for the class of '52, and everybody was very happy to be there. Now, one of the members of our class, Bettina Blake, lives in Boston, and she could not be here today. But she asked, and she's a writer, and she asked that I read what she had written in memory of our classmates who had died. And here is how she started it. 2 poems in memory of 4 classmates of '52 deceased this past year. And they include Bunny Mayers Goldhaber. I don't know if anybody knew Bunny, but I happen to know her personally. We went to high school together also. And Evelyn Faila Rockhill, Joan Monkeld Wilson, and Linda Shapiro Collins. And I don't know if any of the family are here, but we can chat about it if you are. And many others who had died earlier. Okay, this is what she wrote. What are we to do as Barnard classmates leave us one by one? Taking their intelligence, their career and family, dearly won. Let us meet them on the campus of our mind's eye and share, as years ago we did, the love of learning Barnard nurtured there. You will be part of our lives forever. Together we will come and go across the campus of our imagining, and you will be Barnard for us, a friendship, a kinship in discovery, a shared thirst for challenging ideas and for those tiny signs, eternity's mark, a part of our lives forever. Bettina Blake, class of 52, and thank you, Bettina. I'm sorry you could not be here today, but we have wonderful memories of our time at Barnard, and as I say, every year was a milestone year. Thank you.
I'm Elizabeth Dalton. I retired from the English department a few years ago. Many of you knew Rem Patterson, who died in January, and know how deeply he was identified with this college. But he did have a life before and outside of Barnard. He was in the Air Force, and even more exciting, at one point he was recruited by the Brooklyn Dodgers. not widely known. But he turned his back on these exciting possibilities to get a PhD in English from Yale and to teach at Barnard. He married a Barnard graduate, Dwayne Lloyd. Did anyone know Dwayne? Who, she was class of 1955. 55, yeah. And with whom and unfortunately, Dwayne died last year. With her, he had two children, Burns and Sarah. He taught at Barnard from 1955 until his retirement a few years ago. He knew everything there was to know about Shakespeare, and he also knew everything there was to know about Barnard, having served as acting dean of the faculty from 1975 until 1977, and as chair of the English department several times. I always felt that he knew a lot that he was too discreet to reveal, no matter how you tried to get it out of him. When there was a need, a problem, a time of uncertainty, people turned to Rem for the solidity of his judgment, the evenness of his temperament, and his fundamental decency and kindness. He was devoted to Barnard, and especially devoted to the education of young women. Rem was chair of the department when I came up for tenure, and no chair could have been more diligent in doing the laborious and detailed work involved in preparing a tenure case, which I learned about when I was later chair myself, or more generous with his time. Whenever I had a worry or a problem, which I certainly did during the tenure process, but also at other times, I would go talk to Rem, and when I came out of his office, I always felt that somehow everything would be all right. He had that gift of making people feel that. I think everyone felt that way. He encouraged and protected and comforted everyone. His door was always open to students as well, and they loved and respected him. Timmy Azell, who teaches at the college now, was once his student, and she describes him as deeply learned and thoughtful, and recalls him lecturing on Shakespeare with his glasses in one hand, the other almost tenderly holding down the page of his volume. I think that's a wonderful image. Rem was selfless in his treatment of all of us, students and colleagues alike. His character was as noble as his handsome profile. He was very good looking. He was the true gentleman scholar, but he was anything but pompous. He was witty and charming and fun to be with and to talk to about politics and many other things besides literature. I miss him, and we all do. It seems right to end by quoting Shakespeare, the end of King Lear. The weight of this sad time we must obey. Speak what we feel, not what we ought to say. So I will say what I feel. I loved Rem. We all did.
Before I begin, I just want to comment that not only was Professor Dalton one of my advisors, so was Professor Patterson. I went through a lot of advisors because I was in Program in the Arts, which was discontinued in the middle of my senior year, and in all the reshuffling, they kept reassigning students to other people. Tamia was also one of my advisors for about 2 months. So I can only agree with you how impressive Professor Patterson was and how honored I was to be in classes that he taught. However, continuing on, I am actually up here. My name is Jennifer Horowitz, and I am here because I just found one of my classmates in the list in the little booklet here, and I had no idea that she had died. I don't know when she died or how she died. I guess I'll have to find out. But I'm referring to Karen Zuckerman, who we all knew as Karen Rivka because we could never quite decide whether she wanted us to use her English name or her Hebrew name. So we would just run them both together. Admittedly, she and I had a lot of political differences, and that's why I think it says volumes about her that I still remember her so fondly. I remember her long red hair and her very warm, cheerful smile that just made people's day seem a little better. And that's just a wonderful legacy to leave behind. After Barnard, she was able to fulfill her dream of moving to Israel, which is probably why we haven't been so much in touch. I assume that's where she was when she died. Again, I'll have to find out. But I hope that that means that she was able to fulfill a lot of other dreams that she had. And I'm just sorry that, mid-40s is really too young.
I'm Myra Janus. I'm also a professor in the English department, like Elizabeth and Constance Brown. And I was also taken through the arduous tenure process by Remington, and he also taught my daughter, who was here at Barnard, Ilomai Kurik. And as Elizabeth said, he was really loved. He was a wonderfully open-hearted man, and one couldn't help but respond to his warmth and to his care for his colleagues. As Elizabeth said, he taught Shakespeare, and the depth of his own understanding of others and the depth of his empathy for others matched that of Shakespeare. As Elizabeth said, he was a true scholar and historian of the Renaissance world and its theater, which he loved. He was eminently cultivated and civilized and learned, but he was above all an ethical man, and he needed no politically correct rules or managers or no ethical committees and their professional administrators to tell him what to do or how to conduct himself or how to behave or what his duties were to others and to society. As Elizabeth mentioned, he was in the Second World War, but at the very end of it in Germany, so he was spared the actual fighting, thank goodness. Remington had very strong principles, and he voiced them when necessary, but he had absolutely no desire to impose them on others. He lacked egotism in a sense. He never insisted upon himself or his own egotistical desires. He had read his Aristotle along with Shakespeare, and he had that kind of moderation and balance that Aristotle taught us in his Ethics. And he helped balance all of us in the department. He was extremely gentle, good, and kind. He was self-contained and sure of himself, and in a sense inward, and yet very outgoing and conversational and social. I mean, that was his strange contradiction, I think, as Elizabeth also mentioned. He cared very much for our peaceful coexistence as a department and for our happiness. And I also will miss him terribly and always will. Because he was absolutely exceptional, and he was the kind of person whom we sorely need in our troubled and turbulent world. Thank you.
It has truly been a blessing to hear all of the remarks this morning. When we think about the impact that Barnard women, Barnard faculty, Barnard staff, and Barnard administration has on each of our lives in so many different ways, it's a thread that we can all weave together, even if we don't each know each other in this room. There's a shared experience that we can all feel as we come back together. When listening to the individuals speak about Big Al, thinking about the pride that those who work in public safety take in the lives of Barnard students, when those of us as students just sort of walk in and out, but then you stop and think about the impact of those who every day give their lives to making sure that we are safe. It really gives you tremendous pause. And I, as a student, as an alum, want to thank them especially for what members of public safety do for all of us. So as we conclude our service this morning, if you are comfortable, if your conscience permits, please join me in a moment of prayer. O God, creator of all humanity, just as we believe each person was created in your image, they were created with a uniqueness about them that allowed them to share their gifts with us in their lifetime. So may it be your will that in their death, they will still be a blessing to us, and that their memories will inspire us to perfect the world in their name. Thank you for coming this morning.